Chapter 43. Matt and I. Stay back! Matt felt the thin, hard point of the crab's segmented legs digging into his skin as the huge crab's weight bore down on them. He looked on in horror as the crab's jeering mandibles formed foamy bubbles of saliva that dripped down to splatter onto his shirt. Stay back, or they'll cook you! But the crab could hear nothing. Matt couldn't move. Only the labored, hyperventilating, and stretched wide eyes displayed Matt's panic. He imagined the crab burning, screeching in pain as it was dropped into a boiling pot. Matt focused his mind so fiercely on that thought, a vein started bulging on his forehead. But the problem with imagination was that it wasn't real. The crab didn't know it was supposed to be burning. It just knew it was hungry. And the strange animal in front of it didn't appear to be able to run. The crustacean's mouth was now directly over Matt's head, and droplets of the bubbly saliva dripped onto his forehead, trickling down into his eyes. Eyes that would scream in fury if they could. "You're dead! Dead! Dead!" The crab was indifferent to his thoughts as it started to lower its mandibles towards Matt's eye. "Die!" A muted, zombie-like groan was softly heard coming from Matt's throat. The result of every fiber in his being screaming only resulted in a quiet that the crab didn't even react to. Matt focused his anger, his frustration, his panic, every fiber of his will. His pupil started to shake with tiny tremors. As the mandibles closed around his eye socket, he finally shut his eyelids tight. The weak membrane was a feeble barrier, and he felt the mandible start to break the skin. A burst of intense heat hit his face. Matt's vision flashed and then went dark. Ina led the human into the marsh, keeping her eyes peeled for more crabs. It was fortunate that the three by the beach had not been able to track them. Crustaceans in general tended to be pretty stupid. The danger came from their strength in vast numbers. They reproduced so fast they tended to infest any area that was left alone for long. Ina had seen the Naga purging them from the area around the tidal room once a year. The ones here were bigger though. Maybe there was more food for them nearby. Shouldn't we follow the beach to where the Asians entered and then track them from there? No. They stayed too long to just dump the cripple up by the beach. They must have taken him into the marsh, she thought. You should at least let me go first. Jessica moved to get in front of Ina. No. You have terrible eyes. You let those three crabs sneak up on you. I lead. Ina stared at Jessica, who seemed a bit taken aback. Also, while Jacob isn't here, I'm in charge. I'm the first mate. Jessica gave Ina a confused look, but hung back to follow. A minute later, she bumped into Ina, who had abruptly stopped. She had been holding up a flat hand. She stared at Jessica, raised her eyebrows, looked at her hand, then back at Jessica. Fuck, sorry, whispered Jessica. Ina sniffed and wrinkled her nose. She thought, it's like the fish Jacob cooked, but more briny. She turned and sniffed in a few different directions, then nodded and headed deeper into the marsh. She could see where the humans had bent different undergrowth with their passing, and there were even a few faint indents still left in the muck some places that had not completely filled in. She soon came to an area that had so much disturbance she couldn't tell what direction to continue in, and then she saw it. A white and brown speckled eggshell sitting on top of the muck. That's odd, she thought. She bent down to pick it up. What is that? An egg? Said Jessica. Shh. Ina gave her a reproachful look. She handed it to her after a quick inspection. While Jessica was looking at it, Ina panned around and her eyes lit up. Another one. This one was resting on a branch of a thick, bushy plant. As she approached, she saw the muck had clearly been disturbed and she quietly crept around the side. Her eyes went wide. There in front of her was Matt. Someone had propped him up against the tree and his leg was torn open and bleeding. On top of him was one of those large crabs. Ina immediately sent out a forceful kick and the crab's dense body was sent away from Matt and onto the ground. She had her obsidian rock in her hand and quickly moved forward to finish the crab off, but it wasn't moving. In fact, it wasn't alive. Huh? The crab's face and foreclaws were now bright red with some black charred discolorations. Fuck, Matt! Jessica had finally rounded the bush. Ina's eyes went back to Matt. His face was also red and small blisters had started to form. Matt, can you hear me? Jessica immediately grabbed his hand and put 2 fingers against the inside of his wrist. He's alive. Doesn't look that way to me, thought Ina. Something killed the crab. Ina started to look around carefully. Give me your knife. Jessica held out her hand. Huh? Are you going to put him out of his misery? Ina shrugged and handed over the obsidian rock. Jessica gave her a quick look of disbelief and mouthed, "What the fuck?" to herself, but she started to cut a strip off of Matt's shirt and then started tying a tourniquet around his leg. Her hands were bloody as she finished tightening it and the bleeding slowed. Matt, can you hear me? Jessica put her palm flat against his chest while she inspected his face. His face almost looks like it's burned, but he is breathing. We need to get him back to the beach. Hopefully the others were able to get the first aid kit back. The last chance approached the beach at a quick pace. The wind seemed to have grown stronger since they had aborted the chase. Jacob, Manu, and Lou were on the front edge of the raft, weapons ready. Captain, do not allow the creature to get on the raft. I am not proficient with martial weapons. 3 huge brown crabs had been loitering on the beach ever since Ina and Jessica had passed through. Manu, Jacob, be careful. Their shells look thick and claws sharp. Be mindful that they likely move much faster laterally. After the Naga, these things don't look too bad, thought Jacob. Jacob was almost surprised at how unfazed he felt. He only felt slightly nervous as his hand gripped the tide sword. A week ago, he would have freaked out when confronted with these creatures. But he had confronted worse. All right, guys. We got this. Remember, the girls might be in danger. Jacob tried to think of something motivating. But, slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. How can slow also be fast? Questioned Lou. It's just a saying, bro, said Manu. The raft bottomed out as the 3 hopped off into ankle-deep water. Manu yelled at the crabs and swished his club, but the crabs were not deterred. Hunger drove them skittering forward. A huge claw darted forward just fast enough to cause Jacob a flash of fear as he got up his sword just in time. The edge easily sheared through the claw, half dropping onto the sand as the second claw thrust forward, pincers snapping. Jacob hopped back and waited. If I go for the body, I'm exposed. But if he attacks me, I can disable his claw, and then he's no threat, Jacob thought. The crab moved forward to attack with its one remaining claw. This time, Jacob was ready and met the claw with his sword at a comfortable distance. As another chunk of claw hit the sand, the crab started emitting a clicking noise and pulled back. Oh, no, you don't. Now Jacob moved forward, raising his sword above his head and slashing downward over the crab's front. The thick maned shell gave a slight resistance as the sword cut through it, leaving a gash between its eyes. Jacob pulled the sword back, and it was now covered in a milky light green liquid as the crab slumped down, unmoving. He heard Manu yell and turned to see him slamming his club repeatedly into a twitching crab's face. He was bleeding from a tear in his shirt. Lou's crab was still alive, and Jacob watched as a crab's pincer came forward and the walking stick slapped it away. It didn't look like the stick should have enough force to move the giant claw. That must be his parry move. I should try to get him to teach me that. Jacob moved around behind the crab that was focused on Lou and drove his sword down, quickly dispatching it. All three of them were sweating and breathing hard, especially Manu, who took a few moments to gather himself. Manu, are you okay? Jacob asked. Huh? Look at your shirt. Manu looked down and lifted up his shirt after seeing the blood with a surprised look on his face. Damn, bro. I didn't even notice. Doesn't look too bad, though. Thank you for the save, Captain. I regret I am not proficient at offense. That's okay, Lou. We're all learning here. A distant trill sounded from the marsh. All right, Manu, you stay with Brennan and defend the raft if needed. Probably best to pull back into the water a bit so the crabs can't get on easily. Lou, with me. Let's go find them. Drown it, Ina cursed as she stumbled in the muck underneath the weight of Matt's legs. The mud fought to hold her foot deep as she ripped it out with strained exertion from her thighs from another step. How is the cripple so heavy? Don't call him that. His name's Matt. We're almost back. They were both carrying Matt back the way they had come, hoping that the people on the raft had made it to the island already. Ina heard a twig snap behind her. She glanced back. At first, it was hard to see movement in the brown marsh that was shifting with the wind, but she focused her eyes. First one, then two, and then more crabs were separated from the visual landscape by her brain. They were closing in. Move! Crabs coming! Ina moved forward abruptly, but Jessica wasn't ready and was pushed off balance, falling into the muck, Matt's top half on top of her. Fuck! Jessica tried to stand and lift Matt, but was now covered in muck and slipped, falling back down again. Ina let out a high-pitched trill. She dropped Matt's legs. Drop him! Jessica, now covered in brown mud, scowled. We're not leaving him. Stupid human, get up! Ina grabbed Jessica's hands and pulled her up. She glanced back. A dozen crabs advanced across the marsh. Jessica was finally on her feet. Leave him. We need to go. No! Jessica was now trying to drag Matt. Her feet were barely keeping traction as she walked backwards, pulling Matt from his hands. Ina grunted. Jacob would get mad if I left her. Drown it. Ina took one of Matt's hands and started to help drag him. Matt quickly became caked in mud and became much heavier, his clothes and body catching on the undergrowth. The ground finally started to get drier and more solid as the lead crab was almost on them. Drown Jacob for sending... And then she remembered what he had said. Ina, I want you there because I trust you. He had thought there might be trouble, and there was. He trusts me to handle it, he thought. When she had needed him, he had been there. Ina didn't care about Matt or Jessica, but Jacob was counting on her, and she decided then that she wouldn't let him down. After all, she was the first mate. She had to be responsible. Ina took a deep breath and handed Matt's other arm back to Jessica. She got out her sharp obsidian stone. She had only a moment before a large crab claw darted forward, snapping at Matt's legs.